it's Miss Miranda. Story time. We've been talking all about bees and pollinators. Pollinator. This story is called Amazing Bees by Sue Unstead, and it's packed with facts that we need to learn about the buzzing of our friend the bee. Amazing bees. Bees are amazing. They help flowers make fruits and seeds, and they give us sweet honey. So let's find out what makes a bee so special. What is a bee? A bee is an insect. Like all insects, it has 6 legs and it has a body made of 3 parts: the head, the thorax, and the abdomen. It has 2 pairs of wings. Bzz, 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 bzz. A bee beats its wings so fast it makes a buzzing sound. That's called a vibration. Let's zoom in close. A bee has a hairy body and face. It has 2 big eyes and 3 little ones. It has a very, very long tongue. And on its back legs are little baskets to collect the pollen. All these features help a bee do its job. A bee starts its life as a tiny egg inside of a wax cell. A white grub, called a larva, hatches from the egg. The bees feed the larva lots and lots of pollen. It grows bigger and bigger in its cell. After many days, it becomes a pupa. The pupa changes slowly inside its cell. It comes out as an adult bee. So it has a life cycle, kind of like the plant. Starts as an egg, grows into a larva, then becomes a pupa. Bee math. Honeybees build honeycombs with 6-sided cells. What do we call that? A hexagon. Bees must visit 2 million flowers to make 1 jar of honey. A worker bee makes about 1/12 of a teaspoon of honey in its whole lifetime. A bee will only sting if you disturb it, and only female bees have a stinger. A bee is a flower's best friend. It helps the flower make seeds to make more flowers. It also helps the flower make the fruits and crops that we eat. The flower has food for the bees and larvae: sugary nectar and powdery pollen. A bee smells the flower and flies to it. It lands on a petal looking for sweet, sugary juice. The bee uncurls its long tongue and dips it inside the flower. It sucks up the nectar. Bees see colors differently from you and me. They can see blues and purples, yellows and oranges. These are usually their favorite colors. They can also see extra colors with their eyes. Sometimes the petals have markings that only a bee can see. These are like signposts for the bee. This way for a sweet treat. A bee sees the yellow flower like this. A bee may visit more than 50 flowers during one trip. As the bee flies from flower to flower, the pollen sticks to its hairy body. The bee combs some of the pollen into the baskets on its back legs. Some of the pollen sticks to the bee's hairy body. When the bee flies to other flowers, the pollen brushes off. Bees are great dancers. They dance to tell other bees the news. The round dance is a bee dances in a circle, and this means there's food close by. The waggle dance, a bee dances in a figure 8, and there is a waggle in the middle. This tells that the other bees the way to the nectar. The honeybee lives in a big family group. Each bee has its own special job to do. Beekeepers provide a home for the bees called a beehive. They can keep their bees safe and collect the honey. Beekeepers always leave enough honey for the bees to eat. The biggest bee of all is the mother bee, called the queen. Her job is to lay eggs. Next in size are the drones, the male bees, and the rest of the bees are females, called the worker bees. The worker bees are busy night and day. Some feed pollen to the baby bees called larvae. Some look after the queen, feeding and grooming her. They make a special food called royal jelly for the queen. Other workers guard the nest, keep it clean, and build new cells. Many workers fly out of the hive to find nectar and pollen. Wild honeybees can build their nest in a hollow tree, in a cave, or under a roof. They build a nest with wax cells. They make honey and store it for the winter. There are now fewer bees in the wild. This is very sad news. Honey is the only food made by insects that we can eat. When a bee brings nectar to the nest, it passes the nectar to the mouth of the other bee. The nectar is passed from the bee to bee. This turns into honey. The bees store the honey in wax cells that make up a honeycomb. Not all bees live in a big group like the honeybee. Some bees live alone and build their own special nest. Some bees build their nest in a crack in the wall or a hole in the ground. They lay their eggs and leave them to hatch. Some bees build unusual nests. If you see a mound of soil on the grass, it could be the door to the nest of a lawn bee. A carpenter bee chews a hole in wood to make its nest. Look around for neat holes in a leaf. A leaf cutter bee may have made them. It builds a nest like a tube out of leaves and cuts a circle for the lid. One of the first bees you will see in the spring is the bumblebee. They are hairy and striped and are bigger than honeybees. Bumblebees live in small family groups. They live in nests in the ground or in piles of dead leaves. Bees are very important in helping plants make the food we eat. We can help bees by planting flowers in a pot or a window box. Why not have a patch for wildflowers to grow in the garden at your home or at school? Bees like flowers with lots of nectar and pollen. Here are some of them. Perhaps your school could have a beehive. Then you could all eat lots of honey. How many parts make up a bee's body? Who is the biggest bee in the beehive? Which is the only food made by insects that we could eat? What sticks to a bee's body as it hunts for nectar? And what are female bees also called? Think about all these questions, boys and girls, when you're illustrating something very important that you learned about bees in this story. I'll see you next time.